Hey everybody, it's Jeff Mucklin from the Nurture Nature Center for another Science at Home video, and today I come to you from Sandy Hook, which is a beach just a few miles south of New York City as the crow flies. And I'm here today to find horseshoe crabs. Now, horseshoe crabs spend most of their adult life out in the ocean. The specific species that I'm going to be finding here on the east coast of the United States, we don't actually know where they spend most of their adult life, just somewhere along the sea bottom in the Atlantic. But every year, adult horseshoe crabs come ashore in May and June to lay eggs, to breed and reproduce. And they don't just do this at any time. Most of them come ashore during the full moon, during the lunar high tide, which is the highest high tide of the month. And that allows them to get further up on the beach than they would normally be able to do, and that allows them to lay their eggs in a relatively safe position. If they were to lay their eggs, further out from the beach, they would be easier for predators to eat. So they lay them further inland where they're a little safer. Despite the fact that they are called horseshoe crabs, they are not actually related to crabs or any crustacean. They're a type of arthropod, which means they're much more closely related to things like ticks and scorpions, and probably their closest living ancestor would be spiders. So they're sort of the spiders of the sea. Hundreds of millions of years ago, there used to be many different species of animals that were like the horseshoe crab. The oceans were filled with animals like this. But in today's oceans, there's only 4 different species of horseshoe crab left. But they're really hardy animals. What is left, is an animal that hasn't changed in about 450 million years. That's how far back in the fossil record we've found animals that resemble the modern-day horseshoe crab, which is why some people refer to them as a living fossil. Okay, it's starting to get dark now, and the horseshoe crabs are just starting to appear. So here you can see 3 horseshoe crabs. The larger one is the female. When you see horseshoe crabs, if you see a really big one, that's usually a female. And the 2 smaller ones on her back are 2 males that are attempting to mate with her. Okay, so here's a smaller male horseshoe crab. Again, I can tell he's male because of his size, and he's covered in barnacles. That's what these bumps are all over his back. Now, he's on dry land, but that's okay. Horseshoe crabs can survive out of the water for short periods of time, so he'll be just fine. If you find a horseshoe crab, never pick them up by their tail or the telson. If you pick them up by the tail, there's a good chance you'll rip it out and you will kill them. It's not a good idea to pick them up there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to just flip him over for a little bit, and you can see all these wriggling legs here. Notice, by the way, he's trying to use the tail to flip himself back over. If you see a horseshoe crab over on its back like this, just go ahead and flip it back over. Just turn it back over. If you leave it on its back, they will dry out in the sun and they will be eaten by birds. I'm going to flip him over one more time. And I just want to point out that when we look at the legs, you can see here 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs of legs. So that's 8 total legs, like a tick or a scorpion or a spider. So again, these are arthropods. The mandible is right in here, and they can use these 2 claws to bring food into the mouth, where they can begin to eat it. And I'm just going to flip him back over, and he's been through enough. We're going to let him go back out to sea. So I'm back from the beach to see the horseshoe crabs, and I'd like to share with you an activity that you can do at home where we're going to build our own horseshoe crab. And in order to do this, you're going to need a few supplies. You're going to need a template that has the shape of a horseshoe crab. We can see the prosoma, the abdomen, and the tail. And we're going to cut these out, and we're going to use tape to tape part of it together, and we're going to need a brass fastener to attach the tail to the abdomen, and that will allow us to rotate the tail and allow it to move around in 360 degrees, just like the tail on a real horseshoe crab. And of course, you're also going to need a pair of scissors to cut out your template. So I've cut out the 3 different parts of my horseshoe crab, and now you're going to want to take the prosoma and the abdomen, and you're going to tape them together. The abdomen is going to be under the prosoma, like this. Like this. So now they're together. So now you're going to attach the telson, or tail, to the abdomen using the brass paper fastener. Right about there. And we now have a completed paper model of a horseshoe crab with a fully functioning movable telson. Our model is very useful because it allows us to see parts of the horseshoe crab that we weren't actually able to look at when we were observing the real thing. You may recall that the head of the prosoma of the horseshoe crab that I found on the beach was covered in barnacles and mussels and snails and worms, things like that, and it made it impossible to see the eyes. But the head of a horseshoe crab has these 2 compound eyes, seen right here where my fingers are. And those are just 2 of the 10 eyes that you will find on the body of a horseshoe crab. 2 of those eyes are on the underside of the horseshoe crab, near where the legs were, and the rest are on the top side. But 2 of those eyes are very large compound eyes that look just like this. Like other arthropods and like other insects, when we look at a horseshoe crab, the hard exterior that we're looking at is its exoskeleton, which is made of a very tough material called chitin. It's similar to the strength and structure of your fingernails, actually, or the hair that mammals have on their bodies. But this gives them a hard exterior surface that protects them from predators and the environment around them. And in fact, it's so tough that the tail, or the telson, of horseshoe crabs were actually collected by Lenape Indians, or the Delaware Indians that used to live in this part of the country, and they would use the telson of horseshoe crabs for spear points, so they would use them as a weapon. Now, no one's really harvesting horseshoe crabs anymore to turn their tails into spear tips, but some people do eat horseshoe crabs, and some people catch them and use them as bait for fishing. But one of the most important reasons why horseshoe crabs are still harvested is to collect their blood. And you can actually use a compound found in the horseshoe crab's unique blood to make sure that medicines are safe. Injectable medicines have to be tested to make sure that they don't have viruses or bacteria in them. And there is a compound found in horseshoe crab blood that is used in a test to make sure that things like insulin or vaccines are not infected with viruses or bacteria. Now here's another interesting thing about horseshoe crab blood. Unlike our blood, which is red because it contains iron, horseshoe crab blood is blue. They have blue blood. And to understand why their blood is blue, I want to show you a very simple chemistry experiment. So as I just mentioned, our blood is red because it contains iron. It contains oxidized iron. And in this experiment, what I've done is I've oxidized 2 different metals. The way I did this was by pouring a solution of vinegar and salt. It's about a tablespoon of vinegar and a tablespoon of salt that I mixed together and poured onto these 2 different metals. Over here I have 4 copper pennies, and over here I have an iron S-hook. And you'll notice that although I dumped the same vinegar and salt solution on these 2 metals, the color around them is very different. The pennies have a greenish blue crust surrounding them, and the iron S-hook has a reddish brown crust all around it. And this explains why our blood is red, because our blood is rich in iron, whereas the horseshoe crab's blood is rich in copper, and that's why it's blue. So just remember that if you see any horseshoe crabs on the beach this summer, it's best if you leave them alone. Although if you do see one on its back with its legs up in the air, feel free to flip it. I encourage you to flip it back over and maybe put it back into the surf so it can get back into the ocean. They don't pinch, they don't bite, and you will be doing them a favor, which is a wonderful thing to do, because remember, they are on the vulnerable species list, and they are very important for human medicine, for creating valuable medicines. So that's it for this week. Catch you next time.